All right, let's get into it. Today we're going to connect one of the greatest films ever made to a really bizarre, kind of hilarious, and surprisingly deep corner of the internet. It's a story that kicks off with a classic Hollywood mystery and, you'll see, ends with a very, very modern one.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with this line that makes, well, absolutely no sense. We set our pants on fire and sacrifice container ships. It comes from this strange, super deadpan German web series, and it's sung with total seriousness by a group of guys wearing socks but no pants. And trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the weirdness.
So this bizarre song, it's actually part of a video tribute to a man named Sam Foster Catalha, a legendary media tycoon, or medienkunstler, who has just died. The whole video treats his death like this huge, world-stopping event, with newspapers all over the globe splashing it across their front pages.
But the details of his death are this perfect mix of epic and just absurd. He dies at 103 in this massive palace called Xanadu, and he's clutching a snow globe. But inside the snow globe, there's a tiny little outhouse. His friends are planning this huge interfaith funeral, but the whole thing just descends into total chaos.
And right before he dies, he whispers this one cryptic phrase, "Rush schid." His friends and colleagues are just completely stumped. What on earth could that mean? And just like that, this one phrase becomes the central puzzle of the whole story.
So at this point, you're probably asking yourself the same thing I was. What is going on here? The flat, monotone delivery, the nonsensical details, like his childhood friend calling him mortar, all the arguments about funeral flags, it all feels like a really long, elaborate joke. But what's the punchline?
Well, as it turns out, this isn't just some random internet weirdness for the sake of it. Every single bizarre detail is a deliberate and honestly a meticulously crafted parody of one of the most famous movies in the history of cinema. The source is Orson Welles' 1941 masterpiece, Citizen Kane. Yeah, that's Citizen Kane, the film that for decades critics called, literally, the greatest film ever made. The entire story of Sam Foster Catalha's is a shot-for-shot, theme-for-theme send-up of it. And this parody goes deep, I mean really deep. Charles Foster Kane becomes Sam Foster Catalha. The estate is Xanadu in both versions. The famous mysterious last word Rosebud becomes schid. Kane tries to make his untalented wife an opera star. Catalha promotes a totally talentless Russian artist. The parallels are just incredibly specific.
Now, to really get the parody, you have to remember what Citizen Kane is all about. It's a serious, sweeping, dramatic look into the life of a powerful man, all framed by this mystery to figure out his dying word. And the big reveal, of course, is that Rosebud was the name of his childhood sled, a powerful symbol of the happiness and innocence he'd lost along the way.
Which brings us to the big question. Why? Why go to all this trouble to parody a cinematic classic with this super low-budget absurd comedy? The answer is actually right there in the name of the web series, Banalotopia.
Academics who've looked at the series call its method banality as an aesthetic strategy. Basically, Banalotopia takes all the grand, epic themes of Citizen Kane, power, memory, the American dream, and filters them through stuff that's awkward, mundane, and just completely trivial.
The filmmakers are deliberately creating this huge contrast. Citizen Kane is famous for its revolutionary, dramatic cinematography. Banalotopia uses static camera shots in, drab offices. Kane has this legendary score. Banalotopia has awkward silences and, guys singing about setting their pants on fire? And honestly, nothing captures this shift from the grand to the mundane better than this line. In one of the flashbacks, a character thinks back on Catalha's birth name, Samuel Knudelhaas, which translates to Samuel Cuddlebunny. The film takes this towering figure of Charles Foster Kane and reveals his true origin is Samuel Cuddlebunny. I mean, it's the whole joke right there. But this quirky little web series is actually way more than just a clever parody. It tells us a ton about how art gets made, how it's shared, and maybe most importantly, how it's preserved, or not preserved, in the 21st century.
Banalotopia is a perfect example of what researchers call a microstudio. This isn't some giant Hollywood operation like the one that made Citizen Kane. Nope, it's a small, passionate group of people making content on their own terms, completely outside the traditional system. And they're operating with a kind of creative freedom that Orson Welles, who famously fought with his studio over Citizen Kane, could only have dreamed of. They can just release these short, experimental episodes directly to their audience on YouTube. It's a perfect example of this idea of web-native seriality.
But
And this is a big but. This newfound digital freedom comes with a huge and often totally overlooked risk. And this is where our story takes a little bit of a turn, from a quirky parody to more of a cautionary tale. So get this. Researchers who tried to study the series found that its digital footprint is incredibly fragile. The official website? It's gone. There are basically no articles or reviews about it anywhere. Outside of its YouTube channel, Banalotopia has almost completely vanished. It's become what you could call a shadow archive. It's out there, but it has no institutional support holding it in place.
And this points to a really critical issue of our time: digital ephemerality. Unlike a physical film reel that you can lock away in a vault, digital art can be completely wiped out in an instant. A YouTube channel gets deleted, a server fails, someone forgets a password, and poof, it's gone forever.
And this, right here, is the ultimate irony of the whole thing. Citizen Kane, the very film Banalotopia is making fun of, is a protected cultural treasure. It was one of the first films ever selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry. For over 80 years, it's been studied, restored, and celebrated.
And that leaves us with this fascinating paradox. The huge original masterpiece is saved for all time, but its clever, fleeting digital parody, a perfect artifact of our internet age, is in real danger of becoming a ghost. So it leaves us with a pretty provocative question. In an age where anyone can be a creator, what art do we actually choose to remember, and what are we just letting slip away?